Hello and welcome. My name is Margherita Pasquini. I'm the Director of Sustainable Partnerships at Alithia Global, and I'm very happy to see so many of you online today with us. Welcome to the webinar, The Green Travel in Mobility, Sustainable Tourism and the Student Experience in Europe. A special welcome and a special thank you to our guests today, Bruno Castro and Ramune Genzbigelyte-Venturi, both policy officer at the Directorate of Tourism at the European Commission. Today's webinar is an opportunity for us to discuss international higher education through a slightly different lens. It will also be a real dialogue, and not just between myself and the speakers, but with this online community, because Bruno and Ramune are keen on having your inputs for a project they're working on. So I would really appreciate it if you could stay until the very end of the session, because they will have some important questions to ask, and your contribution will be vital. But before we start, I would like my colleague CJ to jump in and share a bit about Alithia, who we are and what we do. To you, CJ.
Thanks so much, Margarita. Hi, everyone. My name is CJ Tremblay. I'm the founder and managing director of Alithia Global Cooperative. Very happy to be here today. A little bit about us. Now, if you've joined us before, you've heard us talk about this and how our work is anchored in climate justice. And with that, I just wanted to take a moment and recognize that Alithia was founded on the traditional, ancestral, and stolen territories of the Coast Salish peoples, the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And that's really important to our work at Alithia because from a climate justice perspective, the Indigenous communities around the world are disproportionately harmed by climate change, despite the fact that they are often land defenders and have been stewards of the land since time immemorial. So while this is specifically unique to perhaps some North American or Australian Oceania sort of regions, it's critical to our work and our students who are global citizens. So a little bit about us. We are a worker cooperative founded by and for international educators. We came together to advocate and support the sector, whether that's institutions, governments, organizations, in advancing climate justice and climate action within the sector. We do a lot of work in training, both synchronous online and a recent online course and community that we've built, of which this webinar is one of the things we like to do. We also support institutions and all those organizations in climate justice and decarbonization planning. Now, you might have heard us talk about this, but this is the online course that we launched. Margarita likes to talk about this as the course we wish had existed when we started doing this work. So you can see that if you want more information, you can scan to learn more about the course, and it includes videos, quizzes, reflection exercises, as well as several experts who are doing the work, and it's specifically for international education. Because ultimately what our goal is to, and we believe that you can increase internationalization and decrease emissions, and we do that work through a climate justice lens, because climate justice isn't just groups of people, it's also generational. So we do this for the ability to have the future generations thrive. So I just wanted to say thank you for joining us. A little bit about what's coming up. We're going to do a super quick check-in poll. Margarita will share a little bit about the context about how sustainable tourism and study abroad are connected. She'll have a little chat with Bruno. And then we'll hear directly from our guests about EU sustainable travel. And then we're going to have a discussion lab. So what Margarita mentioned is we're hoping that you will stay to the end. Your participation is super vital to moving forward together alongside our colleagues and friends from the European Commission here. And then, because I always forget to do this, there will be a survey when you leave, and it would be greatly appreciated if you were able to fill it out. So thank you so much. Margarita, do you want to talk a little bit about the poll while I launch it?
Yes, absolutely. So let's have just a quick poll to have a sense of what participants are already doing at their home institution when it comes to sustainable travel. So yes, maybe we can launch it. Thank you. So at any point in the advising process, there are any space given to discuss sustainable travel with your students. And then while I respond to this, if you want in the chat to share when, if it's a pre-departure, if it's in the advisor process, if it's in your policy, and how often you talk about it, that will kind of be helpful as well for everybody.
Okay, so I'm going to end the poll and share it. So thank you, such a huge participation rate. And I'm going to share the results. So 47% of participants do share the information with their students. They have that conversation. And again, as Margarita mentioned in the chat, where, when, how often, that information is super helpful. 19% said no, but we're working on it. So that's great. We know it's an important part and we're just working through how to get that. 22% said no, and then 11% said not sure. So this information is for the people watching this afterwards. So thank you so much.
Okay, now we can move forward and to the next slide. And we just want to talk a little bit about, kind of give an introduction of what we're talking about it. We know that the planet is warming, and the main cause is the emissions produced by fossil fuel. And if you were in the session, I assume you agree with this. In any case, this is science and it's not debatable. What does this have to do with international higher education? Well, flying is a very carbon-intensive activity with no clear path to decarbonization, and international higher education relies primarily on aviation. And if you are in this field, you probably already know this is true, but I would like to provide you with some data to back this up. What data do we have? So I want to start by saying that we don't have complete analysis of the sector emissions because we still don't measure what we do. But in the past few years, some studies have been published. So we can look at the first study that has been done in 2019 by Dr. Stephen Schild, estimated that the global carbon footprint of international students of any kind, from degree seeking to short-term mobility, was something between 15 and 38 megatons, being one conservative and the other one less conservative, which equates to the annual emissions of a country like Jamaica or Croatia. And again, it's an estimate because as a sector, we don't yet calculate and measure systemically our emission, but it helps to have a sense of the magnitude of the problem. Now, we can also look at another study that has been recently published by Dr. Robinson and others that calculated the impact of the US study abroad in Europe. As you probably know, Europe is #1 destination for US institutions sending students on semester and short-term programs, and the impact on the so-called old continent is pretty big. So if we look at numbers, we see that it's 5.5 billion kilometer travel annually to and from in 1 year, over 1.1 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent emitted, and an average emission per student of like 3.1 tons. We are not counting here the weekend trips that US students take pretty frequently, which elevate the magnitude of the issue drastically, increasing the emissions in a significant way. But we've talked about it in other webinars. We'll talk about it again. This is kind of another chapter, let's say. But what about Europe? So we will refer to three kind of different pieces of research. So one is between 2014 and 2020, there have been 1.9 million conducted travel within the Erasmus framework. 80% of which were related to students' mobility, with an average distance of like 1.3 thousand kilometers. Okay. Then the other piece is based on this number of kilometer travel, it was estimated that the entire period was responsible for something between 413 and 666 million tons of CO2 equivalent, about 98% of which comes from air travel. Okay. Although it is true that these calculations are based on assumptions, we are inclined to think that they're pretty accurate, considering that if we look at the 3 years, 2021, 2023, only 13% of students were benefited from the Erasmus Green Travel Grant, which means that 87% of them almost certainly took a flight. which also resonates with ESN survey sent in 2021, I believe, that reported that 75% of students declared that they flew to their destination. So almost 90% of the Erasmus students fly. Despite the call for a European green transition, despite the green grants offered, which we know is not enough, but at least it's there. Despite sustainability being one of the pillars of the Erasmus program, still almost 90% of the Erasmus students fly. So what are we doing wrong and how can we get better? So there is an interesting word that I believe it is used a lot in Europe, and less probably in other cultural contexts and countries. When we talk about studying abroad, we use the word mobility. We know that students are mobile, that they travel. So they are students, but also travelers. And so I found really interesting to share, these two definitions that are the official definitions of the Eurostat and the European Commission. And I must confess, I was really, really surprised to realize that for Eurostat purposes, anyone traveling for less than a year, students included, are considered travelers, or more specifically, visitors, which if you're born as I am in the 80s, it's kind of creepy as I think. But I let this sink in for a second, because if there's something we are very proud of when we talk about what we do, is that our students are not tourists. Okay, they live like locals. What we do brings existential transformation. How dare you compare them with tourists, right? And yet here we are, and both definitions are true, actually. And so I think this is an incredible opportunity to look at what we do through different lens and maybe learn how to approach the mobility part of the students' mobility concept in a slightly different way. And so I think we're very lucky today, because we have Bruno Castro online with us, who actually went from the Erasmus Directorate to the Tourism Directorate. And so maybe he can share with us a bit of his experience and his thoughts about working in two different fields that are similar to some extent.
Thank you, Margarita, and thank you everyone for attending this webinar. So apparently it's interesting for you. And indeed, I used to work for 7 years in the Erasmus Plus community. That's how I met Margarita, but also I was checking the list of attendance and I recognized some names. So hello, if you know me in person. And indeed, where I had this career change, it was difficult to leave Erasmus, but I'm happy in the new team. And I can see some similarities and connections. Of course, it's a different field, but we come from an assumption in which we believe is that travel is a force for good. And it's a matter of degrees, indeed, how this travel can have positive impacts and also some maybe less desired impacts that we have to manage. And this is true both for students and also for short-term tourists. But in both cases, we believe that, of course, there is a problem with travel emissions. But when I say it's a force for good, both are pieces of intercultural understanding, and you can create knowledge and economic development with both. It's a matter of degree, of course, and I shared Margarita's surprise when I started working on statistics and official definitions. So indeed, a visitor is everyone moving to their usual place of residence for less than 1 year. I know you don't like that, or well, you don't like that. As Margarita said, we consider that our students are not tourists, but you also know that in the field of student mobility, there are also many different spans. Some students are traveling for 2 weeks, others for 12 months or more. In that case, they wouldn't be tourists. And I know that some programs of study abroad, they are on the limit of being considered just a tourism activity or language learning. Well, at the end of the day, from the traveling, I'm not going to enter into the academic content, but from the behavior of these visitors, there are some things which are in common with the tourists. But the longer they stay, they have less things in common, and we can elaborate later on that. But it's a matter of degree. And yeah, I think we can develop further later. But also another important aspect of the link between education abroad and tourism is that students abroad are multipliers of other type of tourism. Normally, when a student goes abroad to another country, he's not going to stay only in that city. Normally, they want to discover everything which is around. So they will be engaged truly as tourists because they will be traveling through the country or even the region. I can imagine Americans coming to Europe that they will visit several countries. So indeed, they will behave as tourists in that way. So it's not always black and white. And also they will have friends and families visiting them that they will behave as tourists as well. So beyond the official statistics, and I can have a word later about that, more technical, more detailed, we can see that it's a continuum and there are some similarities. So I think this conversation we're having is relevant.
Thank you so much, Bruno. Thank you. Yes, indeed, the two sectors, we strongly feel that there are many there is an overlapping there. So it's interesting to explore how we can collaborate and how can we kind of leverage one and the other to get to where we want to be. Okay, so now I think it's time for a quick presentation that Ramune put together for us.
In the meantime, I will introduce myself. So my name is Ramune Genzbigelyte-Venturi, and I have been working in tourism team since just before the pandemic at the European Commission. Before I was working in a completely different area in maritime affairs and fisheries, so a very different sector. As you see, we also travel a lot in the Commission. We connect different sectors, and very often this is an advantage and gives very interesting perspectives, as Bruno just shared. What I wanted to tell you and explain a little bit in a nutshell, what is tourism and what is sustainable tourism in Europe, in the EU. So I will just give you maybe a few figures to say how important tourism is in Europe. We are speaking about 3.5 million enterprises. So 3.5 million enterprises in tourism, which the majority of, 99%, are actually small and micro enterprises, so even family businesses. So again, we're talking about small businesses here. We're talking about over 20 million jobs in tourism, and as it was mentioned, Europe is the most visited destination. But it's not just economy. So when we talk about tourism, we talk about the businesses, the enterprises. We talk about tourism destination. A destination can be a country, a city, a village, a resort. So really a different granularity. We talk about visitors. Who are visitors and tourists? Actually, there is a term of visitors economy. So when you are going to visit your family, in a way, you're also a tourist. So that fits also in a definition. So hence the surprise for some of you that you're also fitting in this visitors economy, so to speak. We're also talking more and more actually about the host community, the environment, because inevitably we're causing either positive or sometimes negative impacts as we interact, as we travel and visit, right? But then again, tourism is not just an economy, not just numbers. It's also about social cohesion, about developing regions. So traveling gives, of course, economic value and jobs to certain regions. Think of remote areas where there are few possibilities to develop another economy. So very often tourism has this positive force. And if you remember pandemic, right, when everything was halted, when travel and mobility was paralyzed, we realized that we were all tourists and what it means and the real value of travel and connectivity emerged, right? So something that we lost, we realized how valuable it is. And very quickly, actually, European Union developed something it did not have before, and it usually develops in the moments of crisis, is this cooperation. So member states mobilized to open the doors and to have the possibility for people to move while respecting the pandemic safety conditions. So this was a very interesting moment for tourism. Travel and tourism is a way of life for many Europeans. So there is a lot of tourism that is happening within Europe, right? What call is domestic tourism. And it is very much resilient. So we saw after the pandemic, if we see the figures really of tourism coming to European destinations, it's really already since the last year, we have surpassed all the record levels before the pandemic. And this year is even increasing. So in this case, we consider that tourism is really resilient and it helps actually to recover, and it has helped recovering many regions and cities. If we talk about pandemic. Of course, situation is not the same across Europe, different global situations. The war of aggression in Ukraine, for example, is affecting very much tourism inflow in the areas that are regions that are more bordering Ukraine. We see all these, let's say, global impacts in different areas of Europe. So it's not that homogeneous and not that simple. We see also trends. For example, we do surveys, of course. There is a European Travel Commission that predicted that this spring-summer travel, Europeans are taking more trips, they're staying longer at the destination, and they're allocating more money than before. So we see different shifts in the way people travel. And talking about sustainability, actually, of course, on the one hand, there is what resurfaced, and probably you've all seen in the media, the over-tourism, the mass tourism. So there is that unbalanced aspect. On the other hand, there is a very, very strong demand for more sustainable, more tailored tourism, more unique destinations, slow tourism, etc. So both trends are coexisting. Of course, our job is to motivate and to promote more sustainable tourism. In the long term, what we see, tourism will grow because the markets such as Asia or India or South America, they're growing. So tourism and travel in general will grow. The challenge there is, of course, for Europe, first of all, to remain a competitive, sustainable, unique destination, if we can put that this way, attracting really tourists that are looking for quality travel, and at the same time to manage this tourism in a sustainable way, so it is balanced in the sense that we have destinations that are happily receiving tourism and the destinations that are looking how to attract tourism that are really lacking some opportunities, that they can also achieve that. So this is the situation. And so when we talk about sustainability in tourism, in classical terms, sustainable tourism has three pillars. So there is this environmental sustainability, social, and economic. But what we're focusing mostly now is on climate action. And I'm sure that by now you have all heard about European Green Deal and climate targets. So tourism is obviously benefiting from them and also contributing. You have mentioned the CO2 emissions and aviation mostly, and transport. However, it's not only that. When we talk about green transition of tourism, we're talking about many mitigating actions. So that could be also the consumption. We talk about circular action. So for example, think once you arrive to the destination, what as a visitor, as a researcher, as a student, what you are doing there, where are you accommodated, how much time you're spending there, you know, if you're buying local products, if you're integrating with the local community. So all these kind of things are very, very much important, not less than the travel itself, than the emissions that we produce once we get there. Of course, when we talk about mobility, we are promoting sustainable mobility. So if possible, the transport modes that are much more sustainable, that we consider, for example, rail transport. And you know that we have programs for youth to promote rail travel. Yeah. Not only for youth, but we're developing different projects and boosting infrastructure in rail to have a better connected Europe through rail. Another thing that we are promoting is improvements in public transportation. And I'm sure when you travel as researchers, as students, you are using also the public transport. Intermodality between these different modes of transport is extremely important as well. So these kind of things we are working together with our member states and businesses, adapting to climate change impacts. So severe weather events are very much important when we work on sustainability, be it addressing emergency situations, including tourists when they have to be evacuated. They don't understand the language, they are not always warned. But also, for example, the changing tourism flows. You have probably heard of coolcations that people more and more reserve in different seasons, holidays, or a little bit up north in Europe, etc. And one more aspect is benefiting host communities. This is something we are looking much more into because we hear more voices also of discontent in the communities in those areas or those destinations that are overburdened. So we have to make sure that as travelers, we respect the communities, and the benefit that tourism brings is really shared and showed, and the results of this, let's say, richness that tourism brings is communicated well, and that the quality of life of the locals is improved. So we have to involve the communities, but also a very strong aspect is about awareness raising of the travelers, of the consumers, and us and each of us in this case. So this is a little bit in a nutshell. And yes, here you see on the slide where we are now. So we are launching actually with a new commission. You know that we have new commission since recently, and we have a new commissioner precisely responsible for tourism, transport and mobility. So the two aspects are very nicely linked, and a very strong attention to tourism as a positive force, but also, of course, addressing the challenges. And here you can see the challenges. I mentioned most of them with addressing this issue of unbalanced flows, where on the one hand we have mass tourism, over tourism, and on the other hand, destinations are struggling to attract tourists, climate change and weather episodes, etc. These things we've talked about, and yes, increasingly more and more competitive market where Europe has to stay up to the speed, but without sacrificing its ambition to remain quality and sustainable destination. So with this in mind, an idea of launching European tourism strategy already early next year, what we're doing now is listening to our stakeholders, but also all the public. So everybody is a tourist, everybody who has traveled will have a word to say. We will have, maybe in the next slide, in the next slide, you will see some of the areas we will be consulting on. So we'll launch a public consultation very soon, hopefully by the end of this month, where everybody will have a chance to say a word. What do they think about different aspects, and also share maybe some research that could be interesting for us. So once again, everybody's involved in tourism policies, not just businesses and destinations, but also we as tourists, as travelers, and the host community. So it's really a complex ecosystem, as we call, very interesting and very much connected and heterogeneous. So I'll stop here and maybe we'll take some questions later on.
Thank you, Ramune. It was like so interesting, and it's so interesting to me, and it's kind of like it gives me a lot of hope to think that Europe wants to remain like a competitive destination using sustainability as a factor to do so. I think this is really, I mean, to me, it's a great strategy, and I really hope it will, this is the line and the path we will follow, because it's great. And I think universities can also benefit from it, and also can use this as a driver, because we've seen in past surveys that students are interested in climate action sustainability. So it kind of aligns with what we've been seeing around for like researches and surveys from the sector and the field. I just want to say something very quick about the global approach, like the kind of overall approach to sustainability, which obviously I agree with. I think that the reason why we focus so much on aviation is because, first of all, we talk about mobility, and also because as individuals, that is the most powerful thing we can do to reduce the emissions in general. So like everything else, if calculated and measured, is smaller than that, and that's why we do want to focus on what kind of characterized our field and also what makes more sense. So that's why I kind of focus primarily on that, not because the rest is not important, obviously, but in terms of numbers, it's just like what it's kind of the largest part of our emissions. I think thanks Bruno also for sharing the questions to like in the chat, and we will get to the questions in like a few minutes. And I think it's really great. Thanks for sharing it in advance, because they're big questions, so it's important that people participants have time to kind of digest them a little bit before saying something about it. But in the meantime, while we're with you, I do have a few questions for you, if you don't mind. So something you mentioned already, I'm going to but we're focusing on the intersection between sustainable tourism and international students. So we educators, what can we learn from the tourism sector? And that we can also use to help and support students to opt for low carbon or greener ways of traveling. Is there anything you think it could be taken from tourism?
Yes, we have also a very lively tourism stakeholders community. Ramune was explaining that it's not only a matter of destinations and visitors or travelers. There are many people involved. And we actually work with them from the European Commission. We have an interesting website, what we call the platform, will page you, the EU Tourism Platform, where we gather a lot of best practices and experiences from the tourism community, which can be inspiring for you, for educators. I understand that many of the people following this webinar are the international relations officers. So, for example, actually, we're looking at good practices of universities already working there. We didn't find, but this gives an opportunity for you to be the first one and share your good practices in this platform, which is open for stakeholders. So if you have good practices, you can share them with others. You can even make pledges if your university commits to somehow link the tourism and education, or you commit to green the way your students travel. You can submit a pledge, and in a couple of years we will review how many of these pledges are in progress. So it's a way in which we are measuring the progress of the stakeholders community. So you can do voluntary pledges through this website, the EU Tourist platform, and you can see very interesting experiences from companies, so not necessarily universities, but we will talk later probably about business travel. So university is also a big company, and we are discussing students, but professors, administrators are also traveling for conferences. I know that NAFSA is coming soon and other important conferences, so you also travel. And I know that Margherita in particular is involved in greening the conferences and how to travel in a sustainable way to these kind of conferences, and maybe you don't need to travel when it's not needed. So this is also part of tourism and international education. So you can see examples from other stakeholders. But something very practical that, for example, you can do, and I can suggest, is depending on the services that you provide, the orientation or support services that you provide to the incoming or outgoing students, probably to the incoming ones, you tell them a bit about your region, your city, what can they do in their leisure, where can they live, how can they move, they can use public transport, they can visit the region. So maybe you can partner with the tourism offices in your cities or in your region and ask specifically, not just for general leaflets, but how they are promoting sustainable practices. So maybe it's a link, because also students or international students, they also like to volunteer. So maybe they can contribute to sustainable tourism as hosts, as they are also in this limbo between being residents and being visitors. So maybe they are good placed. I don't know, maybe they can have internships in the tourism offices, or even just for you to ask for materials and good experiences. You can ask the tourism offices what are the sustainable hotels or the sustainable paths or cycling paths, or these kind of these practices. Some cities or some regions are more advanced than others, but I invite you, each of you, to connect and to contact and see what kind of synergies, because at the end of the day, we are talking from the European point of view, but this is very local, the actions that everybody can do as well. You can do it from your local point of view. Ramune is saying connecting business with leisure. Sorry if my answer is taking long, but also wanted to clarify when we were discussing the definition of tourism and whether students are included on it. You don't need to worry. This is, at the end of the day, is a very technical definition for statistical purposes, but it's not, I mean, we know there are different sectors. It's interesting to put them together and to look for the similarities and differences, but it's not the whole policy towards students is now treating them as tourists. It is something quite technical. And at the end of the day, what we are measuring is tourists who are registered in accommodation establishments. So even in short-term rentals or in hotels, typically your students will rent a house or an apartment, or will be in accommodation on residencies. So we are measuring visitors in many different ways. So we know that students at some point, they are not this type of tourists who go to hotels. So when we are asking hotels for data, we know that your students are not there normally.
No, but I think the point is, I think this is a great opportunity for us to look at what we do in a different way. So I think it's a great point. And that's why we kind of keep going back to the definition point, not just because we want to get obsessed with definitions per se, but it's more like, I think it's a great way for us to kind of walk away for a second from what we do regularly and kind of look at what we do under with through different lens and under different lights, so that we can actually reconsider, because this is the problem. And this is the problem. Students are not traveling sustainably, even within Europe, which is, probably the only continent at the moment that could potentially provide some options, and yet we're not there. And so we are trying to kind of bridge the the good intentions with the action. And so I think the definition helps us kind of think about it. So no, your answer was not too long at all. I think it was very interesting. So thank you, Bruno. And I just want to ask another question before we move to maybe to kind of open the floor to questions from the audience, and also questions, from the audience and for the audience as well. How can we create more awareness around slow travel and the benefits for people? Because this is something we're struggling as a field with. When we market and promote our programs, the bucket list and things to do and just go here, go there. So it might seem counterintuitive to students when they get here to kind of slow down and just enjoy something different. So any advice, any thoughts here to share with the community?
Yeah, I can take that. There is no silver bullet, if I can say so. It's a process. We are a fast consumption society, and I think tourism is just part of it, right? So we like to collect the clicks and the places we visit. There is this trend and social media impact, Netflix destinations, for instance, that grow like mushrooms sometimes after some success. stories are out there. There will always be people who will travel along the social media guidances, but we can also change that trend. We know already destinations, by the way, that are using social media influencers to reverse that, so to promote destinations that are sustainable, less known, and to promote the awareness, how you can actually contribute as a tourist, as a traveler in a sustainable way. So using that power, really showing the good examples, not just the bucket list. There is also a gap between the intentions and the actions. We see in many surveys, you see, yes, I am a sustainable traveler. Of course, I will choose sustainable options. But when it comes to the choice, people don't always do that. Why? Because it's less comfortable. Because when you have little time for your holidays, you want to save time and money. Still, in some cases, sustainable choices are not always the cheapest. A train trip is not necessarily cheaper than taking a flight. And these things, of course, these changes don't happen overnight. This is a market issue, infrastructure issue. The idea that sustainable is more expensive has to be changed. And this discourse we are working on as well, because starting from the businesses and tourism destinations, the services and the changes that you make are an investment in the future. So you save costs. If you're a hotel, for example, you invest in more sustainable energy infrastructure or saving water. These things in the long term will save you costs and will attract a conscious visitor, environmentally conscious visitor. So you are investing in generations that are interested in that. But that, of course, takes time, and we are also supporting in this way businesses and destinations. There is another trend that we see, of course, and it's not new because you're also researchers, the unique and tailored experiences that are also powered by artificial intelligence. So more and more, the digital help of artificial intelligence is there. So it might be positive, but there are also risks there. So we also have to see how we manage that. And many, many more things. But in a nutshell, really, it's slow tourism. There is a trend, a very clear trend. All we can do is to change the mindset, educate both travelers, help the destinations and the businesses to attract these minded visitors. It's really a cooperation job, and it's not happening overnight. And use the tools that are there, be it digital tools or media, in a positive way. So it's a joint effort.
Thanks, Ramune. I think the educate people call here hopefully will be well received, because this is what we do, right? So I think educating students, educating ourselves, because as Bruno pointed out, obviously it's not just about students' mobility, it's our sector mobility. Today we decided to talk about students' mobility particularly, but we know as the adults in the room, we don't want to drop this on students. We want to take our responsibility as well, obviously. Yeah, so I hope this sounds like a call to action for universities here to educate their students and their peers. And now I think I would like for you to have the chance to ask some of the questions. Do you, Bruno, Ramune, do you want maybe to read out loud the questions you would like some answers to, or do you want to give us kind of like the timeline of the survey a little bit? So that I don't know if we can do something later in the year to like contribute with our thoughts, and because like here in this room there are a lot of climate conscious people, so I'm sure their contribution will be like super important.
Yes, so I can take this one. You can see that I pasted some questions. This is already a preview of the consultation survey that will be online soon, as Ramune said, in the next days or weeks. It's a pity that we don't have the link working yet, but soon we will promote through our channels this open consultation on the new European Sustainable Travel Strategy. So you are stakeholders, you might be interested. You can answer, well, not individually, but I would say that on behalf of your institutions, or maybe if you are already gathering, you have this community. I don't know if you want to centralize some answers after this, maybe you can create some document. It will be a longer survey for travel community, but we think these 4 questions are more targeted for the higher education sector. Of course, you can answer to the rest, and you will see. But what we like to see, and I can read, is how do you think, because it's a consultation where we will be working on this strategy. So we'd like to know what elements we can include in the strategy, what the citizenship and the affected people and the experienced travelers can tell us that we should include in this strategy. So, for example, how should you improve travel to destinations and mobility within a destination? Because, well, another aspect of international students, they are less likely to have a private car when they arrive to destination. Probably they will use public transport. So how to improve that in your cities? Probably you are concerned about that while ensuring environmental sustainability. So it's travel to destinations and within a destination. Second question, how can the EU support emerging and less visited regions and ensuring that balanced tourism development that benefits all? Because indeed there are many destinations who are promoting a lot because they will be happy to receive more and more visitors, either students or other type of visitors. Question 3, how can the EU help destinations improve community engagement? And here I can think that universities can play an important role on community engagement and address the resident concerns about tourism, if any. And the fourth question that will be important for you, maybe it's interesting to think about authenticity. We're discussing the low travel. So what are the most effective ways in which universities, destination, tourism operators can support and enhance these authentic experiences? We already mentioned, we already talked a bit about that, but maybe you would like to contribute in a more structured way. And maybe you have already some views quickly, so you don't need to wait for the formal consultation if you want to react. That's why we pasted the questions before.
So if anybody has any thoughts or anything that they would like to share with the group right now, I think that's a great opportunity. Also, if you have any other question about what has been covered so far, I also like this. I mean, we have 10 minutes approx. And so I think we can use this time to like take questions and have an open conversation. I understand that the questions are pretty complex. So if you, so it might take time and it's not a yes or no answer. So if you don't have like right now something to say about those questions and you want to think about it, Bruno, Ramune, CJ, and I talked about how we can collect perhaps some answers. So maybe we can circulate a document. You want to share your thoughts, we can do that as well. So you have more time to digest this information and kind of process it. But if anybody has already some ideas and want to share, please.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I can give them some more time. There is this question from Poppy Trantafiliou in statistics, and Ramune already answered, but I also have something here on business travelers. So it's not exactly the same, but I have some statistics that came out. They are not official EU statistics, but also from stakeholders we gathered that, for example, according to surveys, the Europe-based business travelers, so it would be you in this case, 42% of business travelers, they answer that they always or often think about carbon emissions when deciding whether to travel to work in the first place. So this is not just about the way of traveling, it's deciding whether to travel or not. 42% of Europe-based business travelers compared to 36% in North America, 35% in Asia Pacific. And then when making decisions on how to choose more sustainable options, is around 40%, both for Europeans and Americans. 44% of business travelers take this into consideration regarding accommodation, and again, similarly, 43% regarding meals. So you can see that around 40% of professional travelers think about sustainability.
That sounds a good number.
It's true that maybe there's some bias that those who don't think at all, maybe they don't even answer to the surveys, but there's always this problem with surveys.
Yeah. Okay, there's also another question. Can you share some student-friendly resources that might be useful to provide to students? For example, resources that could be included on a university website that encourage sustainable travel, both to the location of study and while they're there.
Mm-hmm.
There are some guidelines, if I can say, I'm trying to look for in the website that I shared, European Travel Commission. They have
Yes.
prepared for destinations, guidelines on sustainability, including the awareness raising, etc. Even for children, actually, the books, but when we talk about students, think of the children. I mean, the education has to start in schools. What is a sustainable travel, really? We have also a project where we are developing awareness, raising awareness, fishes, really tips for destinations that could be used. It's still not out there published, but once we have them, we can share. I'm thinking also, beyond European Union, remember, it's not new, but Iceland, for instance, the famous sustainability pledge of Iceland was a nice promotion campaign listing really how you can be a sustainable traveler in a very nice and nudging effect. The point there is really, how can I say, not to discourage people, not to scold them to travel and to experience, etc., but in a positive way to inform them what could be a more sustainable choice. So again, obviously, transport, aviation, this is an issue, and as you say, this is the main contribution to CO2 emissions. But nevertheless, there are situations, if you travel to an island or another region, you have no other choice, you take a plane. However, there are, to make sure that there are other modes where you can really contribute positively. We more and more, by the way, we don't talk just about sustainable tourism, but we talk about regenerative tourism, which means leaving a better place, right? In many senses, in sense of environment, not leaving the footprint, but recovering the ecosystems, the biodiversity. So there are tourism products, for example, where you actively contribute to research in biodiversity, where you plant trees. These are basic and simple, but really, for example, you take a boat on the coastal areas and you help the scientists to collect research, or as a diver on the ecosystem there. So a lot of interesting ideas are out there, and these are none of less important in terms of sustainability. So I would just encourage, when you communicate to your students, go beyond the CO2 emissions, think of biodiversity, think of local communities, the impact that we bring, the positive impact, how we can do that, consume local. All these things are really, really important.
Yeah. So I wanted to add, I pasted 2 links, actually our official portal of tourism in Europe, visiteurope.com. You have a lot of materials there, and currently we launched a few weeks ago a campaign in this sense, which is called Unlock an Unexpected Upgrade. So when we think, the message is that the upgrade is not just getting some free drinks in business class, but an upgrade could be being engaged on a transformative experience. So the travel can be upgraded by meeting with locals, but having a regenerative tourism, or having calmer, slower type of travel. So we try to promote this as an upgrade. I think it's a good communication campaign.
If there are no other questions, I'm very happy with the chat today. I'm very, very happy. It was a great, inspiring chat, and I hope the colleagues online have enjoyed it as much as we did. And I want to thank you very, very much, Bruno and Ramune, for being online. I know your schedule and agendas are super busy, so thank you for making the time for us and for our community. And we will certainly be in touch again with maybe trying to collect some answers from our peers and colleagues. And please, I'm sorry, I don't know where my voice is going. And please, we're happy to be the bridge with this group, and just keep chatting and sharing resources.
One more thing I wanted to Sorry, Margarita. Sorry that I popped it. I just remembered there is this initiative, and I thought about you, EU climate ambassadors. So that was created with European Green Deal, and actually there anybody can be the ambassador. You can join as a community, as an individual, promote your ideas, share what you're doing, and above all, also connect with like-minded people. So there is an opportunity also to connect for you. And it's not topic, let's see, related, so you can explore this opportunity as well. There are regular calls to join, etc. So I think it's a nice opportunity for you.
Indeed.
Thanks.
And congratulations, really, for what you're doing, for raising already awareness, which is a lot.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, and see you online soon, hopefully.